Friday, the final day of the week. These are the voyages of the program Unsportsmanlike Conduct. Its ongoing mission: to explore strange new movies, to seek out new bits and new edifications, to boldly go where no radio program has gone before. Oh, Kent's Movie Club. It's El Kent's Movie Club. El Kent's Movie Club. It's El Kent's Movie Club. Believe that it started in the depths and the dankness of COVID as just a gimmick to fill time because we had no movies to review. We said, what are we going to do about Kent? We're going to have to do something. We came up with this stupid idea of doing our own movie reviews, watching old movies, and sometimes some new movies, especially now that streaming is in. And here we are now, 200 episodes later. We welcome you to the Movie Club and the first, well, I guess we've done a Quint box before, but not very often. Josh has rejoined us. Michael is here. And, of course, the star of the show, Kent Wolgum out of the Lincoln Journal-Star. How you doing, Kent?
I'm doing well, and it's kind of mind-boggling, honestly, to think 200.
Yeah, that's 200 weeks. And, of course, we didn't do, there's been a few weeks we've had off, but it's been 200 weeks of this.
Yeah, that's like 4 years, man. Who would have ever guessed?
Josh, how did the fundraiser go last night?
It went awesome. Thank you for asking. We don't have the final figures just yet, but we're looking at north of $2,000 in total. We just got to find out what we got from the beer sales, but had about $1,500 just from the raffles alone. So very, very cool night. Very cool night.
Awesome. Very cool indeed. All right. So I wanted to pick something special, and when I had picked 200, and it's hard to believe we've never done a Star Wars movie. And I think part of it was because, we've all seen them. People talk Star Wars all the time. But I thought, you know what? If we're gonna break the seal on this, we should probably break the seal with a movie that, when it came out, was not as popular as the original. But as time went on,
the most popular,
it became the most favorite Star Wars movie of the hardcore fans, the new generation, like my kids, your kids, who saw it for the first time. And now it's universally considered the best of all of the Star Wars movies. Empire Strikes Back.
Universally?
Yeah, it's the best.
Yeah, Nick, did you still think that Episode 3 is the best after rewatching this?
Episode 3.
So okay, no, hold on.
He's like Chris Heddy, Michael.
No,
oh my
okay,
God.
I think you guys have misconstrued what I have said in my opinions about this movie. I just said that it is my personal least favorite of the original trilogy.
Empire is?
Yes, Empire of the original trilogy, Empire is my personal least favorite.
Okay, well, I didn't know you did drugs. That's cool.
You did?
Kent, why? So it's funny because there's a lot of movies out there in the Marvel Cinematic Universe that are determined by the director. How much was this having Kirshner come on, having a different writer come on, that eventually made this, for most people, to be the best of the original trilogy?
What I think two things do that are related to what you talked about. First is Lucas didn't just bring in the new director, and it wasn't just one writer, right? Lucas still oversaw everything, and the woman wrote this, originally wrote the script, whose name just disappeared.
Mm-hmm.
Lucas rewrote it. Then Lawrence Kasdan rewrote it.
Right.
And then Lucas rewrote it again.
Mm-hmm.
This is the rarest of all events in which 4 or 3 people, one doing it twice, actually wrote a good movie. Okay, that's a rarity. The production budget on this thing was ended up being in the $30 million range. The production budget on the first one, I think, ended up being in the $5 million range.
Yeah, they went
So
over budget. I mean, they gave him a bigger budget, but they
It was
went way
Lucas's
over.
money. It was Lucas's money.
Yeah,
He
they
went
had to take out a loan.
He paid for it. Yeah,
Yeah, well, he got it. He made it all back.
Yes, he
And then
did.
some.
he did fine.
And
Yeah.
then some.
Yeah.
But what really I think has done it, is that this is the movie with the linchpin to the whole series in it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think we all know what it is. It's when Luke finds out that Vader's his father.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's the linchpin to everything else in the series, including what came before it.
Yep.
Right.
And what came after it. I mean, it basically it established the Skywalker saga. Before, he was just some dirt farmer who, is trying to save the world. But then we find out, wait a minute,
Water
this
farmer.
is a
moisture farmer.
this is a family feud. So you're right.
Yeah.
This was the key to this universe opening up to all of us. It wasn't just an idea, we're going to make another movie because the first one was really successful. This opened the door to everything. And you mentioned it, Kent. It's that plot line, which it's still amazing to me. He was able to keep it secret from all but himself.
But he
and-
didn't know.
And Ham.
He didn't know it on the first writing.
didn't
No,
know.
this
At the
later.
time they
Yeah.
actually knew.
Yeah, right.
He kept it secret,
Yeah.
and people on set were there were many.
shocked.
They were shocked.
And if you noticed or didn't notice, it was always episode 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He, from that point on, he had assumed, I'm not sure he thought it was going to end up going 9 or whatever it did, but he for sure was going to do 6.
Yeah. He was going to do
Right?
the first 3.
Mhm.
He was going to
Yeah.
do the first, he was going to, 4, 5, 6, and then go 1, 2, 3. So
Mhm.
he knew that in 1979, I guess. Was that when this thing came out? 79?
1980.
But I mean, he made it in 79.
Sure. Yeah.
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 So
It
so
took
he
extra
knew
time
that-
to make, also because one of your main actors, an actress,
The
had such a
actor?
bad drug problem that they had to stop early on,
Mhm.
get her cleaned up, and keep going.
And
And-
Mark Hamill gets in the car accident.
And,
then,
Luke was in the car. Yeah.
and then she came back on that set and was
Yeah.
still had a drug problem. There
Yeah.
were all
How
kinds
skinny
of
she is
issues
compared to
with her.
one. That was coke, man. Straight coke.
Yep.
Michael,
I mean,
you
hell
said
of a
earlier
road,
this
man.
Michael, you
That's
said earlier
true.
this week that
Yeah.
it's been like 2 days since you watched it. You watched this movie a lot. For me, this was the first time that I'd watched it, I believe, since probably 2018, 2019. So it had been a while. Stunned at the pacing and just how it's gets into the story and you are off to the races. And there's no wasted scenes. It is incredible how this movie moves, how it bounces back and forth between the various planets that they're on, and it never seems to die at all. It's awesome.
And why was that, Kent? Why was that? The hero of this movie is someone not in the movie. It's Lucas's wife. She went back and recut so many different scenes to make the pacing better because no one could figure that out. She figured it out, got the pacing right, even changed some critical things that Lucas didn't want to change, but he's like, I don't want to fight with her, and it made the movie better. She's the hero of this franchise, really, the first 3, but definitely the second movie.
And she got rid of some of the flab.
Yes.
You know,
There's no flab in this movie.
There's no.
what
no.
I read somewhere way back,
Mm-hmm.
like when they re-released it, 15, 20, whatever, was that
97.
she cut 97. That would have been so that she cut 20 some minutes out of it.
Mhm.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Sliced it like this. We don't need this. Don't need this. And who knows what she cut, but that's part of why it works is that it was very well edited, probably by 3 people, really, because you would add your regular editor, you would have had Lucas, and then and then she went in and did everything else.
Well, Lucas was having, according to the documentary, was kind of having a little nervous breakdown.
Nervous
And-
breakdown and heart problems all
Right.
at the
And
same
so
time.
in the first movie, he had the heart, went to the hospital. In the second movie, he kind of just stepped back a little bit because he was worried about his health and couldn't deal with it anymore.
That's why he brought in the Kirshner to direct.
Right.
it's amazing because originally when they greenlighted the second film, he hadn't determined that this was going to be this 6-piece opera. And yet they were able to concoct what I think is the perfect second act movie.
It is.
You think of the second act of the 3-part trilogy. The heels have to get their heat.
They do.
Mm-hmm.
And I always used to call this movie Star Wars Darth Vader Kicks Ass. Because this movie to me is about 2 people or 2 characters, Darth Vader and Han Solo. This is their moment, right? Because if you think about it, Vader in the first film was a henchman. He was just, he was Big Daddy Cool Diesel standing behind Shawn Michaels.
He was supposed to be like a general.
In the third movie, he's kind of a patsy because the Emperor takes him.
Yeah.
But in the second movie, he becomes the central figure. He is the central badass. And I mean, those first 30 to 45 minutes,
He just killing people left and right.
he's just like one of the best lines of the movie. Everyone talks about the Han Solo line.
Yeah.
I know. To me, the best line in the movie is after he kills
Piet.
He kills Admiral Piet and says, "Apology accepted." It's just like he just
Awesome.
wiped the dude out.
Yeah.
He just killed
Actually,
him.
It's not Piet. It's not Piet. That's
Or
my
not
fault.
Piet.
It's not Piet.
He actually called him captain. He promoted him to admiral. Then after he killed him, he said
Piet got
captain.
promoted. Yeah.
Because Piet's alive at the end.
Piet
He
got
makes
the
end. Yeah.
Yeah, he promoted him. Either way,
Great
he
line.
he just wipes him out. But Vader, obviously, centerpiece of all of this. Can't mention, of course, the big line at the end. But in this movie, I think this is the movie. Everyone looks at Raiders. I think this is the movie that makes Harrison Ford an A-list action star. Because, in the first movie, Han Solo had some good lines.
And he's a doubting Thomas in the entire first movie. This one,
He died, by the way, in this movie. He's supposed to die.
He's supposed to, right?
die. He had no contract. He didn't have a contract for the third movie.
Which is why, again, perfect second act movie, because that's why you freeze him in carbonite.
Absolutely.
Because if he doesn't come back, at least you can write him off in the third movie. Obviously, that didn't happen. But
2 things on Ford. This came after Raiders.
Yep.
So Raiders
was 81.
But
right?
Kasdan had written Raiders.
Okay.
So in my mind, this comes after that. Because Kasdan sort of set Raiders up, I think, for Harrison Ford. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So I see those two things as almost interlocked, not one led to the other. It was kind of a package on the way, right? And these came out within such a short period of time between each other. I mean, back then you'd see somebody do a movie and then you wouldn't see them again for a couple years, Well, this came bang, bang, and that's what I think together they sent him. I see it as kind of a combination and not one led direct to the other.
Right.
Another thing that stood out to me about this was,
They put a black
eventually
guy in it?
it's like,
come on.
The only black guy
Obviously,
in the entire
obviously
universe.
the Fremont guy left out the fact that Lando's in it.
but like
him and Tim Jackson are the only two.
The longer that you have a movie series or like a television show, eventually the characters become caricatures of themselves, where the writers are playing the hits. This is still so early. I found C-3PO unbelievably funny in this movie, and because they're do you disagree? Oh, that's right, Michael, you hate it. I'm laughing at damn near every line that he has in this movie. He was destroying me
When he got shot, I'm like, good.
He just explodes everywhere.
We literally had this conversation off how much Michael hated C-3PO.
Oh man, I thought he was perfect in this movie.
Michael, you mentioned something off the air, but when he pops up just as Han and Leia are about to kiss,
oh my gosh, so funny!
He pops
They've
up,
already kissed.
You hated it, but I was like,
I laughed so hard.
Perfect timing.
Robot blocker.
Yeah, so funny.
Sure.
I thought he was great in this movie. I thought R2-D2 was great. Like Yoda, is Yoda. I always forget how weird Yoda is when he first shows up and he's just rummaging around and eating things, throwing crap, hitting him with the cane, hitting R2 with the cane. Oh, good stuff.
Now imagine we've gone forward to Baby Yoda, right? So
Grogu.
But on R2 and C3PO, those characters were literally ripped out of a Akira Kurosawa movie.
Yeah.
Right. And put in the first one. This movie borrows from another Akira Kurosawa movie. I mean, Lucas is in Magpie Central with these pictures. He's pulling from all these other pictures
He's a
and
weeb.
putting them together,
Yeah.
which is why for some people like me, the first movie is, I don't like to compare. This one's a lot better than that one. The first one is really takes all of those influences and it tells a classic hero's journey story.
Yeah.
Okay. And it is a self-contained picture, right?
Yep.
You can watch that movie and never have to watch the 8,000 of them that have followed, and it still works. The second movie, after you've watched it, you kind of have to watch at least the next one
to see how it finishes.
or you got nothing. And that cliffhanger ending has inspired, for bad or worse, and in most cases worse, sequels like that. Oh, we're not going to really end the movie. Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the differences that I see between the two pictures. So I think this one is maybe a better film on various levels, but the first one is almost a more contained movie, and a movie that is it's a bit more entertaining, I think, because it's lighter. It's more of a comic.
Oh, much lighter. Yeah.
much
No, but this one does, we mentioned C3PO. There's the banter between Han and Leia. And then you mentioned Yoda. So there are lighthearted moments, but you're right. And that's why, and I remember when I saw this for the first time, and I remember just how excited everybody was. Oh my God, we're getting another Star Wars movie. And a lot of us of my age, I was 10 years old at the time, we were just anticipating, it's going to be another feel-good movie. It's going to be just like Star Wars, and the good guys are going to win in the end. And so that's why a lot of people walked away from Empire the first time when it first came out, disappointed because they weren't used to the heels getting the heat. They wanted to see the baby faces win again, and they didn't.
Soldier. This is Winter Soldier, if you're talking about Marvel.
Sure.
It's the different kind of movie among all similar movies.
But when you let it sink in a little bit more, you got the third film. It made you appreciate, yes, of course. And so back to Kent's point of how this was the linchpin movie, that this opened up the key to the entire universe.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I find fascinating, and this goes back to Nick and maybe a little bit of Josh as well, is that when you're from this generation, these last two generations, and you've had the prequels already in place, it really skews the way you think of these characters. Like when I'm watching the movie now, I'm like, how could Yoda not know that Palpatine was doing this? How could he be sitting up there in the damn committee and going, nothing's happened, everything's
because he
fine?
had Mace Windu, who was the worst Jedi of all time.
So
right
again,
next
all
to
the
him.
retconning, all the retconning for the young people, I think makes it different watching the movie. When I saw it originally, obviously, I didn't know any of the stuff. I've watched everyone. I've watched all of the cartoons. I've watched all the documentaries. And so now when I watch it, it is a different feel. It just is.
Yeah.
And young people, I'm sure, were the same way. That watch the prequels first. And then,
I'm happy. I saw the first three movies first. I saw 4, 5, 6. I saw that before the
three.
Yeah.
I can't imagine starting out with Jar Jar Binks. I mean, come on.
That's what Nick did.
Well, I mean, if you have young ones, or if you've never seen it, you've got to watch it in the order they were released. It's got to be 4, 5, 6. And I know there's some people that have concocted
the
this.
machete order.
Yeah, the
4,
machete
5,
order.
1, 2, 3, 6.
No. It's you got to watch the originals, then you go back to the prequels, then you go to the sequels, because that's the reason why the story was crafted.
There's a scene when they're on Dagobah where Yoda's talking to Luke, and he talks about Jedi. And I want Luke to go, if you guys were so great, how are you all gone?
Yeah, why are you the only one left?
Why are you the only one left? I mean, it's you into some ghost. What's going on? Where are all the Jedis if you guys were so great?
Yeah.
That's the question you can ask.
Ken, another thing, and it's funny watching it. I watched it on Disney Plus. I don't know how everyone else watched it, but they have, of course, the 90s CGI crap in there. And it just reminds me, like, most of the movie, though, is physical, practical sets. And we've talked about that, comes back in a lot of these movies that we talk about with you, Kent. And I love the practical sets. Like the movie looks gorgeous. Watching it in high definition last night on my big ass TV, it was like, this is sweet. This looks really, really good. But then they get to like when they got to the Cloud City and they're flying in, it's like it just, man, that 90s technical effects is just pretty bad.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and that was state of the art. You know, that was industrial light.
It's
magic.
horrible.
Yeah.
It's so poorly.
I mean,
Think about if you had to go, he had to go invent the process to make the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They had to go build industrial light and magic. They had to figure that all out just to make the movie.
Exactly. And you know, I really hate that they slapped all that CGI crap into those original movies. I really hate that. And so I painfully watched this on whatever it is, FX on demand on your regular, you know, my direct.
Because they have it they have the original.
They have the original, but it's got commercials in it.
Wow. Oh, I didn't know
But
that.
I'm like, I want to watch the real movie, not the one with all the CGI crap in it.
I understand the way Lucas was thinking, though, that he wanted to do all that stuff originally. He couldn't do it. He didn't have the money or didn't have the technology.
Right.
And then he waited forever for the technology to show up. He's like, well, let me go do all the stuff I wanted to do. I kind of understand a little bit. I wish he wouldn't have done it. But, I mean, basic stuff he changed, like making what's-his-face shoot first in Star Wars. I mean, that kind of stuff.
That wasn't necessary.
But just adding little characters that he couldn't add before, I don't have as much problem.
It did help. I mean, I appreciate the fact that, you know, you got Ian McDermott to come back and be the Emperor the first time we see the Emperor because and if you've ever read the story, I mean, they basically put some woman in really bad makeup and then superimposed chimpanzee eyes.
Yep.
When you see the hologram of the Emperor's face for the first time. So, I mean, I appreciate some of those things that were added back in, but I agree the practical effects that this movie had, and I saw this at the Fremont Theater, and I just, again, it was just one of those things that just blew you away.
Yeah.
And also, and we haven't really talked much about this, you would have thought, as huge as the Muppet Show and the Muppets were at that time, that having Frank Oz basically do his Fozzie Bear voice for Yoda would have been a turnoff or been like, oh, this doesn't work, but it did work. I think it was because of the his broken
reverse English.
Yeah, his reverse English. And I think that did help. But yeah, Yoda was a great
They tried to get another voice for Yoda.
Yeah. It's
and they couldn't find somebody that voice could match with the puppetry. Because Frank Oz was the master.
He was the puppet, yeah. Or he was a puppet.
And so they were basically stuck with Frank Oz and the Sesame Street voices, right?
Amazing.
Yeah, which is fine. Look, listen, you go back and you look, you had the best of the best. Go look at the guys who worked in the making the mask, doing the technical stuff. All those guys ended up becoming the best of the best. They went on to leave Industrial Light Magic, start another group, go on and make more movies. They were the best of the best. They didn't start off that way. They were guys they found in the backyard.
Sure.
But in the end, they were.
But that's what these movies did. They opened up that whole door. So, Nick, I'm curious, going all the way back to
Rick
the beginning
Baker's
of the conversation. But you said this was your least favorite. Now, upon rewatch, how do you see it now?
Of the original trilogy, it's not my least favorite Star Wars movie ever. And just because it's my least favorite doesn't mean I don't love it or think that it's not amazing or important.
Just stand behind your opinion. Just
I am, but I'm explaining my opinion. I need you to understand that I don't hate this movie. It's just my least favorite of the original three.
So you hate
the first 30 minutes of this movie where they're on Hoth, that is peak Star Wars to me. I love that. That entire sequence on Hoth is amazing. It's for sure the most quotable Star Wars movie. All the quotes that you hear are from this movie. I like that they went back and they got like Tamora Morrison. They went back and put his voice on Boba Fett. Because I mean, that just makes sense.
Makes sense, yeah.
Because he's also all the clones and everything. It is still my least favorite movie of the original trilogy. Just because I like a good conclusion. And that's why I know that this movie is important for setting up the conclusion and bridging the gap. But that's why I still like Jedi the best, because Jedi felt like there was more of the pacing. It had things, scenes that I like more. There's more of those scenes, like the speeder bike chase in Jedi. That is my favorite Star Wars scene. And
you like that better than the chase through the asteroid field?
I do. I like that way better. Than
I think
the chase
through the
asteroid
asteroid field is
The
my
best,
favorite.
the best scene though is the fight on Mustafar.
Yeah,
The
that
fight
is.
on Mustafar is the best scene in all of them.
I'm just talking original trilogy, but
Oh,
my
okay.
favorite
Yeah,
Star
I
Wars
meant
movie
overall.
is actually Rogue One, because Rogue One took the parts that I like the most about the first three original Star Wars movies and it put it all in one movie.
It's the retcon movie. It allows you to retcon the whole series.
I don't think that Rogue One retconned
Yeah,
anything though.
What? Okay. When they're going to go look for, they're on Hoth and they're going to go look for Luke and Han. What do they say? That's Rogue 2. They put Rogue One in as a retcon to having Rogue 2. Everything about that movie is just going back and correcting or putting everything in from the other movies.
Rogue One has been
How-
around for a while though. Rogue Squadron has been around for a long
but
time.
that's what if you listen.
Rogue One is
Lucas,
part of Rogue
Lucas
Squadron.
says that's a little thing they put in there for. They knew they had a Rogue 2, so that's why they called it Rogue One as a throwback to people who watched the original movies.
But that's not a retcon. That's a reference.
It's okay. You call it what you want. I call it a retcon. Every time they go and they fill in a gap is a retcon to me, and that's the whole
No,
movie.
a retcon
It's
is
all-
when they change things that were previously
that's not-
established.
that's not
That's
how
what
I
a
think
retcon
That's
is.
not how I think of a retcon.
Well, you're wrong.
I think it was a throwback. I think of it as being a throwback to something that happened,
About
and it
to have a
allows you to be able
lightsaber
to
fight
do
here
that.
in the
See,
studio.
No.
A retcon is changing things that were previously established, like Lucas making Greedo fire first when Han shot first. But a reference isn't a retcon; it's just a reference. It's a way to bridge the gap, and I think Rogue One.
So it's a way to bridge the gap, and that's what they're doing with that. Rogue One was a bridge to the gap to Rogue 2, making sure that we learned how to be able to how they got the actual information to Princess Leia. All that is added in, so we fill in those gaps.
Sure,
Okay,
All right.
I guess I don't know what you're arguing.
Well,
I'm not arguing. It's a great movie, but all it is a way to fill in all the gaps. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, either way, I'm glad we picked this one first. I'm not saying we're going to pick out other Star Wars movies down the road. I have no idea, but if there was one we wanted to talk about, this was the one I wanted to talk about because I've grown to appreciate it more and more as being of the Star Wars generation. I have grown to appreciate this movie, even with all the new ones that came out, more and more every time I watch.
John, is it your favorite now? Because I remember when you guys did the show together, Michael and I were Empire guys, and you were a New Hope guy still at the time.
Well, okay, it's a better movie, but going back to what Kent said earlier,
That is more
it's hard.
self-contained.
It's hard to compare the two because the original Star Wars is the hero's journey and could stand alone. The reason why that is still my favorite is because it was the first. But in terms of if you just sat them down and just watched them, as not part of the same universe or side by side, Empire is the better film, but New Hope is still my favorite because it started everything.
Yeah, it was your first.
And I think that probably also I'm right in the same sort of boat with John, right? I mean, you two have no way of knowing this because it was way before you were born, right? But I was living in DC at the time, and there were lines literally all the way around the block of the one theater in Washington, D.C. that was playing it, right? It's a big theater, but it was playing in one theater. And so you had to literally wait. I think I had to wait like 3 weeks to get to see it because I was not going to go stand for 4 hours and then get shut out at the box office, right? So I think I went to a first show on a Sunday. So I went to see it at like 11 o'clock in the morning on a Sunday, and it was full, like 500 people. You see this movie, which is a really good movie, especially for its time, right? And that leaves that kind of impression on you that is going to make it a favorite no matter what follows it, or at least for me.
Yeah, definitely.
Ken, do you think it changes just movie? So obviously movie going has changed because we can just go online and pick our seat and there's no standing in lines. Does it take away a little bit of the excitement of new movies because we don't do that, because we don't line up, because we don't have to go in the night before?
Absolutely. Well, what really did it was when they went to releasing movies on 3,000 screens.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, they released this thing, I believe, on 130.
Isn't that insane?
Yeah. It's such a little. Yeah.
130.
Yeah.
Right. So you had a city like Washington had one screen.
Wow.
You know, one of the suburbs, there was one, I think, playing out, or two playing in the suburbs, but in DC itself, where I lived, there was one screen. You know, now it'd be on what, 30, 40?
Oh
50?
yeah. Be airing every 15 minutes at a theater.
Oh yeah, and then you'd have staggered start times and
Yeah,
all
look at
this stuff.
Avatar when it came out. The amount of screens that was
Yeah.
on. Look at the
Yeah.
amount of showings they had it on. Yeah.
Incredible.
And I think that's changed a lot of it, you know. But because the standing in line lasted for a while, and then
Yes,
they
it did.
figured out we're gonna put it on a bazillion screens at once.